Welcome back. And welcome back additionally to Inventory Wipe Horror Fest, also known as what is apparently Vex going full out. Unlike his other stuff, there is no exploring to be done here. The entire area is just a giant box, chock full of Ghast spawners, blaze spawners, and probably skeleton spawners, with nothing but an infinite pit underneath a flimsy bridge-looking thing that we're supposed to climb across and inevitably get blown off of. Sounds great! Here's a wild thought. Maybe we could not do that. You see, it turns out that a really strong strategy for dealing with Ghasts is not looking at them, because if they can't see you, you might as well not exist. Pity it doesn't work that way with kids, but anyway, we could do a similar thing with the spawners themselves. Cohabitation is possible, it just requires us all to be in different zip codes. This is a very fancy way of saying I tunneled up the side of the room, popped any conveniently available spawners that I could get my fingers into, and spent a good 5 minutes playing the world's most aggressive game of ping pong until the windbag population had declined back down to the realms of reasonable. Having successfully purchased my don't get firebombed back into the Stone Age insurance plan with a couple of stacks of arrows, I can then take the trip back down, restock my potion effects, and head back up for the next stage of the plan. OSHA compliance. Per 1910.28, subsection B, subsection C, subsection 1, on holes, employers, in this case Vex, have a duty to provide fall and falling object protection, and must ensure that each employee, which in this case is me, is protected from falling through any hole that is 4 feet or more above a lower level by either covers, guardrail systems, a travel restraint system, or a personal fall arrest system. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm reasonably certain that infinity is larger than 4, so this seems like a clear case of non-compliance to me. Thankfully for Vex, I'm a generous employee and am willing to pick up the slack, and as such construct a fully compliant, entirely enclosed walkway for safe ingress and egress of the worksite. Admittedly, I'm not entirely sure how to go about litigating the Ghast infestation. Usually when OSHA manages the handling of living entities, they're talking about, like, cows, not flying, floating, screaming rocket launchers with a personality complex. Likewise, I'm fairly certain that there isn't any provisions regarding orbital bombardment, since the fireballs are independently propelled projectiles and therefore don't count as falling object hazards. Wool collection is easy thanks to a generous contribution made by the local swimming pool, though it does sort of beg the interesting question of what the rest of the room is for, and exploring that will take a moment. Hold, please. Ah, I see. I appear to have found a portal to Purgatory. Or possibly Ohio. The evidence is inconclusive. Oh wait, no, those are buildings, so it is definitely Ohio. Nope, it's not a bird, it's not a plane, and it's definitely not Ohio. It's actually just more Inventory Wipe Horror Fest, which is currently really not living up to its name. Unfortunately, I'm out of construction materials. And there we go. Now, I'm sure that Vex has just put an incredible amount of work into this, and it is a super heinously difficult and challenging area. However, he seems to have forgotten one key detail, and that detail is Fortnite. And also the multiple double chests of disposable building materials I have been hoarding like a squirrel with a nut fetish. Quite a lot of painstaking construction later, and I successfully breach into whatever this is. From my brief look outside before I started engaging in extreme tunnel rat behavior, it looks like the entire nether map is comprised of the portal, a bridge leading to a large central square platform thing, and 3 knobs of nether brick and other assorted junk that is presumably going to contain something useful. I'm currently in the leftmost one, and with a bit of digging am able to ascertain that it holds redstone ore. This is the so-called secret 20th block that I need for the monument, but I am sadly bereft of Silk Touch and don't have the gear to push in and secure the tower, so I have to pull back. Another quick everything flavor resupply run puts a pin in that problem quite handily, so let's get back into it. I'm reasonably certain that the knob I'm in is stable enough to not launch me into the void, but just in case, I'm only using lightly enchanted iron gear, which has become my standard throwaway gear for working near all-or-nothing hazards like void damage. Hello, I'm here to deliver an important message regarding your car's extended warranty. Please okay then. As I later discover, each of these things are filled with a lovely eclectic assortment of silverfish, blazes, creepers, charged creepers, zombies, and ghasts. On their own, none of these are particularly dangerous mobs, but when combined, they effectively counter most of the traditional cheese tactics I would have used because of how weird the combination is. Which is fine, actually, because it just means that it's time to use some untraditional cheese tactics. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to something near and dear to my heart. It's hot, it's spicy, and it's legally considered a war crime in the civilized countries of the world. That's right, it's napalm. Or, actually just lava, because this is a children's game and Microsoft doesn't want us to have fun things like guns. Fantasy blasters? Totally okay. Guns, though. Guns in my Minecraft game? No, we have to draw the line at guns. Guns, guns, guns.
Microsoft. Violating EULA requirements. Vanilla.
So anyway, the new plan is to burn everything alive through the strategic relocation of the friendly neighborhood supervolcano. Obvious benefits: lava is a light source, and we'll barbecue everything except the ghasts and blazes with no issues whatsoever. Plus, we're in the nether, so it spreads like water for extra juicy goodness. Downsides: it will also barbecue me. Or it would, at least, if I wasn't fireproof. So actually no, there aren't really any downsides. Napalm's great, I don't know why people aren't using it more. So yeah, when a solid 20% of the room is covered in extremely bright patches of liquid ouchie juice, the area does become a whole lot easier to traverse. Who would have thought? It kind of wasn't worth it though. The room is a repository for a bunch of gold blocks and redstone ore, yes, but without the silk touch to mine the redstone, neither of those are at all useful, and the only gear worth nabbing was another diamond chestplate and an infinity bow. After a quick detour to drop my supply of Hot Pockets off at my fob and resupply on building materials again, we jump right back into it. My next goal is to build a byway all the way across the central platform of the map, dig through whatever this middle bit is, and continue bridging into the nether brick knob on the other side. My working theory is that all three of the knobs are structurally very similar, because why fix what isn't broken, after all, so breaking into it and securing it should be easy enough, and having a convenient deployment area for lava over the main platform will make securing it easier as well. The bit in the center turns out to just be a loot tower. How convenient! I was just starting to think, wow, you know what I need? I really need to find pairs of pants in a chest in Ohio, infuse them with the souls of innocent bystanders, and wear them on my butt. Not. Getting to the other knob ends up being an entirely separate issue because in the process I get blown out of my tunnel rat hole, dropped into the void, and only just barely managed to land on the intended 1 block wide exposed bridge instead. Absent any other good options, I then hoof it into the knob, which appears to mostly just be full of creepers, thank goodness, and sequester myself in a corner, tunnel back up, and rejoin the main tunnel. Sure. All according to plan. Let's go get the lava. Knock knock, special delivery. Hey there, neighbor, heard you were new in the area, so I thought I'd just step in and offer you some, housewarming gifts. Wait, what's this? Something something? Oh god, it burns? Why? Man, you people are hard to please, aren't you? See if I ever make you a pie again. Anyway, this knob has a bunch of iron blocks and chests full of useless loot. I could not give a toss about either, honestly, other than a lucky third infinity bow, which is getting a bit ridiculous, so we kind of struck out here as well. I do take a chest though, just so I don't have to walk my lava all the way back to the fob. I'm beginning to think the real challenge of this part of the map was getting the logistics network set up, because I swear I spend half my time in the minecart these days. So, we've had gold knobs and iron knobs, so if the trend continues, my suspicion is that we will get diamonds in the third one, and yep, that looks like diamond ore to me. It's also full of creepers and cave spiders, so I need to secure it before I can push in. Oh boy, this nonsense again. And there we go. Surprise, surprise, it's the diamond room. I'm obviously gonna want to go back and grab my fortune pick for these, despite never actually using them, so I have no idea why I did this, but I decide either way to not pick up any now, and after that and the silk touch problem is solved, we should be good to go. I don't think there's any— oh god, there's more. Alrighty. Let's get the show on the road again! And those are blaze artillery emplacements. No thank you. We're gonna go and get some more fire resistance and resupply all my gear again, because holy cow, I have been chewing through this stuff. I'm blind, apparently, or just really bad at color differentiation, and for the life of me could not find the heavily enchanted fortune iron pick that I stole from Helix Caverns, if indeed it ever existed in the first place. Instead, I decided to make do with my fortune 3 diamond pick that I have had since the end of the first intersection. Because, geez. Obviously, I will not be mining all the diamonds or carrying them with me when I push forward, though, so we can leave those here. Back to bridging. Sort of. I have somehow managed to take the pigmen off, so it's more like peeking my head out and having to frantically stab at the ankles of all the ones that have followed me over, except for this one, who is, floating. If the floating pigman wasn't an indication, even by Vex's standards, this bit of the map is a tad bit weird. The wool block, which I later find out is black, is sitting at the top of the obsidian crystal thing at the center of this mess, and surrounding it are a bunch of plates made out of floating ladder blocks that are facing away from me. Interspersed with those are sets of blaze and skeleton spawners that spawn their respective mobs and immediately try to drop them into bins filled with minecarts. The purpose of both of these entirely escapes me. Blazes and skeletons make sense for range defense, though I am, of course, immune to the blazes regardless, and they are smart enough to not shoot in through the ladder blocks, but why? The ladder plates are invisible because they're facing the wrong way, but they're also block update sensitive and can be broken almost instantly, so if the goal was some kind of anti-ranged flak defense, you'd be better served by making a loose fog of the things to prevent chain reactions. As near as I can tell, the minecarts also did nothing other than munch my audio drivers for breakfast. Actually, no, you know what? I don't care. I have my wool, I have my diamonds, I have my pick, I have way too much useless loot that I'm not even going to bother picking up, and I have a screeching headache from being surrounded by ghasts for hours on end. So I'm done with this place. I will come back later. I will figure out what the deal with the giant train station behind the obsidian crystal is. I will grab my redstone ore, and I will be done with it. No more of this nonsense, please. Being able to put 5 blocks in the monument simultaneously feels nice, at least. Would sure be great if the glitched minecart sound effects would die in a dumpster, but we can't have everything. And seeing the empty spots on the monument reminded me that I actually haven't completed the rest of intersection 3, so let's go do that real quick as a kind of palate cleanser. The last zone on intersection 4 is something called hissing sand, which reads to me like creepers over floating sand blocks in the void, and I kinda don't feel like bridging for another 5 hours, so we're gonna put that one off. Instead, I opt to take out frozen venom. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, Goose, cobwebs, venom. The theme of the map is probably going to be ice and snow with a bunch of cave spider spawners, right? And yeah, I would have agreed with you. Cave spiders are a solid anti-player pick, especially if you can get the spawners somewhat protected. And you can do a lot of fun things with floating snow covers in this version, since players can clip through them. And also the movement penalties associated with ice and water being everywhere are an excellent distraction and hostile architecture choice completely independent of anything else. We would both be wrong, though, because despite the whole thing being made out of ice and snow, there is nary a spider to be seen, and as far as I can tell, other than the first 2 spawners at the very beginning, you aren't supposed to fight mobs at all. No, the other half of the map isn't spiders, it's TNT traps. This makes as much sense to me as it does you. So I'm looking at this bit of terrain and think to myself, oh boy, this is a passive trap that can be set up so people who activate the blocks will fall into something nasty. You know, like a spider pit. Vex, on the other hand, looks at this and goes, you know what we need? 50 blocks of TNT in an entirely different part of the map. And to chuck gravel onto some random zombies. That makes sense. The place is absolutely littered with traps like this, and I forgot night vision potions, so I can't even spot the telltale signs of gravel in the ceilings. I get to instead run around like a chicken with my head cut off, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs and wondering whether the trap didn't go off because it wasn't a trap, or because I didn't stand close enough to it. Needless to say, I grab the wool and bail. I didn't even stick around to find the book. This place does not scare me, but the random TNT traps make it astoundingly annoying to spend any amount of time in, and I'm kind of done with annoying map design for a while. So that was, well, not a bust, but certainly a boom. Let's take a look at the last bit of intersection 3, the nest. This time with night vision potions, because I am blind and I do not like to be. Night vision, it turns out, was an excellent call. The nest, much like its name suggests, is a winding, difficult to traverse area filled with enormous amounts of cobweb, precipitous falls, and so many cave spider spawners spawning from the walls that my continued existence is only made possible by a constant upkeep of the regeneration buffs and general lack of arachnophobia. By this point, I have largely given up lighting the areas I occupy because it's too much work, but I'm fairly sure this one wouldn't have been lightable anyway, thanks to all the vertical space being used. The spiders, well and truly, do come out of the walls, folks, and they don't stop. The real enemy, however, is how incredibly disorienting the place is to navigate. Like, I thought frozen venom was bad, but boy was I wrong. I do not think, at any point, I knew where I was in this part of the map. My entire strategy was to blunder around aimlessly until I found things that I needed in the order that I needed them, and to hope that my armor and potion supply would hold out until then. It also worked, largely because the place was just really small. The book sitting on the side of the wall somewhere was the first to be found, and then the wool at the bottom of the map, surrounded by creeper and ghast spawners, showed up soon after. Though, now that I think about it, creeper and ghast spawner defenses are kind of a bit odd, because usually Vex protects the wool better from accidental mob destruction, but whatever. I got in, I got what I needed, and I got out. Give or take a small amount of wandering in circles where I then spent a large amount of time tunneling through a wall because I was cripplingly lost. So with those two down, it's time to go play in the hissing sand biome. I sure do bet I know what this is gonna do. Though, to be fair, I thought that with frozen venom and was completely wrong about everything except the existence of ice and snow, so maybe I will reserve judgment. Right off the bat, I am less than impressed with the accessibility features and amenities being provided. Like, I get that we can't really expect wheelchair ramps and stuff, but would a ladder have been too much to ask? Some stairs, maybe? Now, a good rule of thumb for Vex maps is that you should never, ever walk on any sort of block that has either falling physics or can be made to spontaneously not exist. And my Vex radar is beeping like crazy with all this here sand on the floor, so why don't we just really quick do a little bit of exploratory digging to check what's under, yep, called it. Yep. Well, this place is going to be an absolute delight to work with. To reiterate, there are 4 block-thick layers of floating sand on the floors, resting on top of a lava lake. There is a thin layer of glass holding back the sand in the ceiling from collapsing and burying me alive, and there is lava above that. And almost certainly there's going to be creeper spawners or proximity TNT traps somewhere down here that I haven't found yet. Hold that thought, I'm gonna need to get some stuff. So, rhetorical question for you. How do you deal with an environment that is unstable enough to spontaneously collapse if you interact with it, is surrounded by lava on all sides, and may or may not be full of explosives? It's simple, really. You don't. Digging out my creeper farm left me with multiple chests of stone brick, and I have enough coal to give the Appalachians a run for their money, so the tool cost involved in excavating the dungeon out is negligible. This plan is fantastic and has no flaws, and as it soon becomes apparent, is utterly irrelevant, because the creeper spawners aren't generally placed in areas you actually have to walk through. They're placed down side passages, which means you can quite easily clear them out and break them manually, or deliberately pop a creeper to blow up the spawner and just ignore the collapsing sand mechanic. Which is lame. With the single, sole, and only interesting mechanic thoroughly nerfed into the basement, the rest of the map is milquetoast. The place is a maze, yes, but it is not a terribly large one, so in a few minutes I can depth-first recurse myself to the location of the wool without any issues. I also find a diamond pair of boots with a fur and also an identity crisis that are utterly useless but are kind of interesting mechanically. Back in the day, the way enchantments worked was entirely item agnostic and led to some extremely odd edge cases. One of these is that the efficiency enchantment could work on anything, even if it wasn't something you would normally break blocks with. If you manage to get one of these items, much like efficiency on a tool, it increases break speeds for things you could normally break with that tool, which is, in this case, your fist, producing an item that can very quickly break glass and glowstone blocks in a way no other tool can. I don't recall whether unbreaking worked on armor, and my intuition is no when Vex made the map, but yes later on. But either way, my armor is better regardless, so I can't be bothered to wear them and find out. I tried digging around a bit for other pieces of fun kit, but other than the book chapter, this seems to be all there was for the area. In the spirit of partial credit, I did grab the book before beefing it to the exit, but I don't really care about the lore, and I'm not gonna read it aloud on a video anyway, so I don't really know why I bothered to do this. Dropping that bit of wool off at the Victory Monument raises another point of concern that I've been glossing over. I am missing a block. The redstone ore is to be expected. I know where that is and just haven't grinded out a silk touch pick for it, but my blue wool block is nowhere to be found, and I have already hit up all of the map areas and gotten at least one block of wool out of each of them. The blocks seem to be given to you mostly in order, and Vex has already doubled up once in Inventory Wipe Horror Fest, so by the monument patterns it should either be in We All Burn, aka the Zombie Tube, or Death's Hallow Ruins, aka Death by Boredom. One of these locations is linear, non-branching, and easy to explore, so guess where we're going to go next. Almost immediately after re-entering the main Death's Hallow Cavern, I spot a second underwater offshoot that I didn't fully explore the first time around. In retrospect, I seem to remember finding Upper Death's Hallow and booking it there immediately when I came through here, so it makes sense that I didn't think to grab this route first. Still, really should have caught this beforehand. This exit leads to yet another vine-encrusted grotto full of soul sand and mossy cobble that has been lovingly populated with way too many skeleton spawners. We found the Death's Hallow spawner allocation, folks. It's in this room. All of it. Really wishing I'd stopped to repair my armor before coming in here, because all the arrow fire is not doing it any favors. Once the room is secure, there isn't any clue as to where I'm supposed to be going, so I do the classic Goose strategy of wandering around aimlessly, looking for weird things and digging into random structures if they seem suspicious. This worked really quickly, and I found the blue wool container about 5 seconds in. I'm gonna chalk that bit of difficulty to having a night vision potion on at all times. I followed the path back out, and there was a very obvious underwater bit highlighted with glowstone that was leading you to it. That was basically impossible to spot without the light overlay guiding you. So, all in all, a pretty cool bit of the map, not hard at all, and it was definitely an improvement over the endless halls of moss. And that leads us to the glorious part of the challenge where I sit in a creeper farm with a bot running for 5 hours trying to grind out Silk Touch. Yay! I am almost certain that there was some Silk Touch tool in the Inventory Wipe Hellfest dimension lying around somewhere, and if I were being a true completionist, I would canvas the dungeon to try and find it before making one of my own. But let's be real here. Anything even remotely resembling balance went out the window in the first episode, so we're gonna go out the same way we came in. By failing abysmally in repeated succession. Strike 1. Strike 2. Oh, wait, no. I wasn't actually supposed to get it, but sure, cool. That took way less time than I expected. Still need a replacement sword, though, but I guess I can use enchanting bottles for that. And yeah, okay, there's the classic Goose luck coming in. Thanks, game. This is a straight downgrade. Though, for some reason, it did make repairing my old one in an anvil cheaper. I don't know how that makes sense, but I'm just gonna chalk it up as an old Minecraft moment and take the win, because I'm already 8,000 mob kills deep on this map, and most of those are creepers. There may be a time to debate the coding semantics of a 10-year-old version of the game, but it certainly is not now. I have stuff to do. And that stuff is debating the design semantics of a 10-year-old challenge map instead. Inventory Wipe Horrorfest has thus far entirely failed to live up to its name, and retrieving the redstone places so little risk that I don't even bother taking off my gear to go grab it. So my plan is to use this time to monologue at you incessantly while showing you what I have to go through to commute to work in this place. So, Vex map. Thoughts. The first and most apparent thing to me is that this map is old, and it shows in nearly everything around it. I'm not going to pretend and say I have a particularly deep level of map design experience, but I have made a couple of surprisingly technical maps for various private servers in the past, and that experience really highlights how inconceivably vast the mechanistic differences are between versions of the games. This version of Minecraft is still fundamentally a kid's game. Modern Minecraft is a game that can be played by kids. The difference is measurable in light years. For the time, this was a very impressive map, and Vex did a lot with the tools he had at his disposal. It's just that the tools he had at his disposal were crude instruments with no flexibility, and pale in comparison to the stuff that modern map makers can work with. Remember that point when I start nitpicking here. Second thought, I'm really kind of regretting making a villager breeder, even though it was hilarious to overpower everything to the extent that I ended up doing. According to the unsourced fan wiki, the map was made in Minecraft 1.3.1, but for our purposes, the exact time doesn't matter because villager curing was a 1.4 thing that was released months after the map was finished, and it is painfully obvious that the map was not balanced around it. Without villagers, the whole experience would have been enormously different. Iron gear is technically possible to farm from zombies via ingot drops, but ignoring that, iron is almost non-existent until you get past the monument, and even after that, it's limited enough that you would be constantly conserving it until the end of the game. Diamonds, on the other hand, are out of the question. I didn't see a single fleck of the stuff until the last 3 maps, and even then it only showed up in the form of rare item drops until I reached the inventory wipe dimension, at which point gear is basically irrelevant. In a lot of the areas, this wouldn't have done much of anything for reasons I'll touch on, but it would have made a major difference in the Helix Depths and Legion Halls in particular, and I suspect those areas would have become far more interesting to progress through. Anyway, third thought, young Goose had a massively overinflated opinion of this guy, completely independent of whatever beef the YouTube comments section has alluded to that I remain happily ignorant about. Part of this, I suspect, was a lack of appreciation for what was possible at the time, because in that day and age I was mostly into the PvP scene and considered any building more time-intensive than a hole in the ground to be pointlessly bougie. And the rest of it probably came from me never actually completing any of the maps I started, but regardless of the reason, I've come to the conclusion that this map is kind of mid, and is nowhere near as technically impressive as I expected it to be considering Vex's reputation. To illustrate my point, let's take a little walkthrough of the whole thing real quick. The starting area is the starting area. It's passive, it doesn't count, so the first dungeon is actually the exploding trees one, and it sets the bar high. You have multiple environmental hazards interacting in interesting ways. You have a new novel proximity trap design that sets and defies expectations, and there are a couple of fun creeper and silverfish surprises hidden around the place. But all of this exists while being easy enough that a reasonably skilled person could figure their way around them without too many issues. This is a solid start. After that, you get to the first intersection, and are faced with We All Float, Boomer Castle, and the Cave of Shrooms. Aside from the gauntlet in Boomer Castle, the only thing Vex does for all 3 of these areas is spam out a buttload of creeper spawners everywhere to complicate environmental hazards and refactor his proximity detector design into a potion trap that is so easy to avoid after your first encounter with them that they end up being more valuable to loot than the actual loot chests are. Still, the aesthetics and environmental hazards are unique across all 3 areas, each feel like they have personality, and the gauntlet is novel. It's a fair showing that can also be easily beaten with a bunch of torches and a stone sword. The second intersection, post-monument, opens to Legion Halls, Helix Caverns, Blast Arrow Castle, and indirectly the Helix Depths. Legion Halls is a classic grinder that Vex plays straight, but we haven't had one of those, so it's fine. Helix Caverns, on the other hand, plays like an empty unlit warehouse with random ore. Because it is. Helix Depths is Legion Halls, but just the annoying parts with added lava and void fog, and Blast Arrow Castle is Boomer Castle with a fun little bridge cutscene and the creepers swapped for skeletons. All of these areas would be fairly easily beaten with stone tools and no armor, except possibly for the Helix Depths. You can see where I'm going with this. Intersection 3, We All Burn, Frozen Venom, and the Nest. Oh, side note, I do actually complete the monument, but obviously, yay me. We aren't quite done yet, though. There was one more railroad to explore hidden behind the black wool, so let's head over there while I finish yapping. We All Burn is the annoying zombie one that I had the luxury of bum rushing past. Again, you would probably not bother fighting any of the zombies if you didn't have gear as good as I did. Frozen Venom is a dark, dreary cave with bad lighting with the same TNT proc traps we've seen all map, but winter-themed. And the nest is just miserable. Endstone, silverfish stone, cobwebs, and cave spiders look bad, and playing with them feels bad. These 3 zones make for a very weak mid-game, none of them do anything interesting or creative, and what little bit of risk they present comes from very low hazards like mob spawners. 2 of the 3 can be entirely run past with no combat whatsoever. Intersection 4 rallies a bit, but we never fully return to the experience of the first few zones. Death's Hallow is 90% maze by volume, and while there are some cool aesthetic features, you mostly spend your time there wandering around looking at various flavors of moss or getting shot. Hissing Sands does have a cool design, but that design has the unfortunate side effect of forcing Vex to build the entire thing out of sand, which scores a 0 out of 10 for aesthetic appeal and prevents him from doing anything super interesting with it as a consequence. Finally, we have Inventory Wipe Hellfest, which is a fantastic idea in principle, but it suffers from its own success in that the objectively correct way to beat it is to not engage with it at all. The Nether Edition improves on this slightly by forcing you to navigate and clear the knobs, but as with its overworld component, you're still rewarded for avoidance tactics rather than fighting. So the whole area is undercut by the fact that you never actually do anything other than dump lava on mobs and cosplay as a worm. If it wasn't obvious, all 3 of these areas do not benefit from having good gear. So, in short, while it's an excellent example of map design in this era of Minecraft, Waking Up doesn't stand up to the test of time, which is entirely to be expected, given what Vex was working with. It was still quite enjoyable despite those flaws, and I had so much fun with it that I'm seriously considering dusting off my map editing server and trying to build a spiritual successor just to see how far the game has come since then. But that, alongside oh so many other projects, is something that will need to wait until I'm not dumping every free second of my life into New Horizons. And I think that's where we'll call it for now. Thank you, Vex, for your work on this map. Thank you all for your time, and as always, I hope you enjoyed.